Alright, so Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes doesn't have the best music track, but if you're playing a Metal Gear Solid game, you're probably not going to be there for the music, and the devs at Kojima Productions did achieve some pretty nice things with their Fox engine in this newest installment of the Metal Gear Solid series. For instance, we were really impressed by the effects in this game. One of the most notable are the claw simulations, which you can see in this cutscene right here. Just look at the way the jacket deforms and flaps in the wind. There's a nice fluidity to the cloth that is very believable, and one of the first things we noticed when firing up the game. As you might already know, the majority of Metal Gear Solid 5 takes place when it's raining, and as you can see, the rain effects are extremely well done. Take a look at the canvas on the roof of the tent and how the raindrops splash off, and even those small splats on the camera. It's these small details that really go a long way in a game, and it's nice to see the devs at Kojima Productions spent a lot of time getting the rain to look believable. Now, when it came to the environment modeling, we did find some small technical issues and the reusing of props. Pay close attention in this shot. We turn around, we see two of the exact same yellow gas cans next to each other. And if we pause it right here, you can see the same gas can in the right-hand corner. As we continue walking, there is even another yellow gas can. While reusing props is something every game does, the fact that the same prop can be seen around just about every corner is something that really can't be overlooked. We also noticed a few areas with some very low resolution geometry. As we climb to the top of this tower, take a close look at the spotlight and the faceted edges. Sure, it's a prop that probably won't get seen very often, but with next-gen consoles, polygon count is not a huge issue, and seeing low resolution like this should be nearly impossible to spot in next-gen games. Now, in this shot here, we're laying in the grass trying to hide from the enemy, but what stood out to us was the animation on the grass. It seems to be animated on a simple back and forth cycle with no real overlapping action or drag to help sell that this is being blown in the winds. It looks like simple flat planes on a repeated cycle. It would have been nice to see a little variation in the way the grass was affected by the wind. As we found during our playthrough, you're probably going to be doing a lot of crawling around, and the crawling animation cycle looked pretty good. There's a nice sense of weight, and it really helps sell that Snake is putting some effort into it. His body would also deform nicely as we crawled over different elevations of the terrain. I guess behaving like a real snake would. However, during these crawling animations, we couldn't help but notice the texturing on Snake's clothes. You'd expect to see some dirt and mud accumulate on his suit. I mean, he is crawling through the mud, but throughout the entire game, it stays perfectly shiny and clean. It would have really gone a long way if the devs incorporated some mud textures that would appear on Snake as he stood up from this crawling position, even if it was just for a moment before the rain washed it off. It would have been a nice detail to add that extra realism to the overall experience. We also noticed another similar texturing issue with Snake's hair. Now, of course, we always love his business in the front, party in the back look, but it appears to be dry, and since it's raining throughout the game, we expected to see his hair behave like it would if it was wet. So in the game, you need to interrogate enemies to gain important information. But I want you to listen to the voice acting, or actually lack thereof.
Spit it out.
So as you can hear, he only spits out a few grunting noises, but the text on the screen indicates he is saying something. It would have been nice to see the devs put a little bit more attention into the voice acting, because good voice acting is a great way to really immerse a player into the world. Okay, so in this shot we see an enemy who we shot a few moments ago with the sleep dart gun. It's a little nice gun that you shoot him and the enemy will fall asleep for a short amount of time. But if you're like us, you see a cliff, an enemy body, and your natural first instinct is to try to toss him off the edge. But as you can see, we toss him over, but he doesn't fall. Our first thought was we just weren't close enough to the edge, so like anyone else would, we try again. But as you can see, there's a type of invisible barrier that isn't letting us. We give it one more good try, and instead we fall over the edge. It's these little inconsistencies in the gameplay mechanics that can take the player out of the experience. But hey, maybe in Metal Gear Solid 5 you can shoot enemies, choke them out, but tossing them over the edge of a cliff is where the devs drew the line. Another major issue we found with the gameplay mechanics was the camera that followed you around. For example, check out this shot here. We're trying to get a good view of our surroundings without making ourselves visible to the enemy, but with the camera angle, it's difficult to get a clear shot of what looms around the corner. And with a game like Metal Gear Solid, being able to move without being seen is going to be the keys to success. And it's simply just too difficult to stay unnoticed if you yourself have to walk out into the open to get a clear line of sight. Now, There are some peeking mechanics in the game, but even those didn't provide a clear sight of what was around the corner. Of course, if you don't want to take the stealth approach, you can always go more run and gun, or just tackle the enemy like we did here. Now your chance of survival might be less, but it definitely is fun. If you can get past some of the game's technical issues, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes is really an enjoyable game, and if you played any of the previous Metal Gear Solid games, you'll feel right at home with this latest installment. If you haven't already, be sure to add us on Xbox Live or PlayStation Network with the gamertag Digital-Tutors.